Alright, welcome back. This is Board Game Officer. Today we're going to talk about 5 things that make Tiny Epic Dungeons a little too hard. And also I've got a couple extra things there at the end that we're going to talk about that maybe could change the difficulty of this game. Number 1 is how many goblins can spawn, right? Because if you spawn that 5th goblin, that's an automatic loss right there. Every time you reveal a room, you have a high chance of revealing a goblin, as well as time goes down, every 3rd turn you're going to spawn another goblin. So this can be very detrimental if you're not taking care of the goblins, or if you have a character that just can't really attack or do much damage to goblins right off the bat. So this is probably the number 1 thing that can really get you, is when you don't take care of the goblins, when they start to take over the whole dungeon, you can't really control them. That's probably number 1 thing. What makes this game really hard is controlling these goblins. Number 2 is very similar, or has to do with the goblins, is not only are they coming out a lot, but it is very hard to control them. If you don't stay on top of it, it basically becomes like this escalating difficulty that once they get like 3 or 4 goblins, it's really hard to make that back down to 0 or 1 goblins. That can also be very difficult, as once it gets up, it's hard to get it back down of how many goblins you are. And you're spawning when you're getting into rooms. They're spawning all the time, so it makes it really, really difficult to control them. After you get a lot, it's hard to get back down, so you're back under control. You have to have the right characters and the right equipment to do so. Also, with the escalating difficulty, is not only are the goblins stacking up and it's hard to take care of them, they also hit harder when there's more goblins. So not only is it harder to get rid of them, just because there's so many, so it's hard to narrow them all the way back down to 0, they also are hitting a lot harder, so you might be dying more. So if you get overwhelmed with goblins, it's really, really hard to get back down. They're hitting harder, and there's just too many of them. If you can't attack more than 1 on your turn, it's going to be really hard to get those goblins back down to 0 to 1, so they're a little bit more manageable. The next hard thing is the loot. Even though the loot is an amazing part of this game, I absolutely love the loot that you have to go through to find that. I mean, you could be lucky that it's at the top. You might be unlucky that it's all the way at the bottom what you're looking for. Especially if you throw in all the story expansion loot. Because the story expansion adds 2 extra loot sets and a handful of just individual cards. So adding those in can make it even harder to find all the matching pairs, so you're strong enough. It's hard to make sure that the stuff you have actually works together. The next one here is the dice, right? There's so much luck of the dice, where you could roll and do amazing damage, or you could roll horrible and get no damage whatsoever. All just because of the roll, not because of the equipment, not because of the loot, not because of the character, just because of the roll, right? So if you don't like the luck games luck of the dice, there is some dice mitigation. However, it kind of is minimal because you have to pay something to it. I appreciate that there is some dice mitigation. However, you can't do it too much. And where you can only pick 1 dice and then one of the 1 or 2s, right? It makes it, if you're not rolling all 3, it makes it really sketchy to try to attack a goblin or something, because the luck of the dice, you never really know what you're going to get. Number 5 that I want to talk about is the fact that this is a dungeon crawler game. However, that's the classification. However, this is more of a dungeon builder game. And so that makes it much more tricky of a dungeon crawler, because usually in a dungeon crawler, you just kind of, do 1 room at a time, but you're just kind of going through whatever you want to do. However, with this game, you cannot do that. And that makes this game much, much more difficult, because it matters where you open up that last door and find that layer, or where you're finding that minions. That matters and can make a huge difference in whether you win or lose. If you know that you've only got a few more cards in the deck until you find a minion, you don't want to run off clear over here. If you're going to run to a dead end, then you're going to have a ritual point all the way on the other corner, and then you're going to have to come to this other side to find the dungeon layer, right? So that dungeon building makes this game way more difficult. This brings me down to the point, let's talk about, is it too hard? That is the ultimate question. That's what a lot of people talk about, is that this game is just too hard, that they just don't want to even play it anymore because it's just too difficult to win. If you have an 0-15 record, it's pretty hard to keep playing. I want to come at this at 2 perspectives here, because I think this perspective matters. If you are very experienced players If you have a group that do a lot of dungeon crawlers that really can get into the strategy of the game, I don't think it's too hard. I think it's a way that you can find the strategy, get the strategy down, and win it. However, my caveat to that is for new players, it is very, very difficult. This is one thing that I struggle with this game is I can play with my group. Absolutely love it. One of my favorite games to play with my group. I don't think it's too hard. We win 99% of the time, right? It's not too hard. It's fun. It's like engaging, but the problem is with new people, I have a hard time introducing this to people. And I find myself being that alpha gamer because I know how to win. I know the strategy to win because the strategy has to be perfect to win. If we don't do that strategy, then I know we're not going to win, right? So it's really hard to bring a new person in and not tell them what to do. In that aspect, I think it is too hard. There should be some built-in ways to make it easier to introduce people to it, and then you could ramp up to the normal mode. Because one, if both of you are new, then it's going to be really hard to find the strategy. If one of you is new, but one of you knows how to play, then it's hard not to be an alpha gamer. I think that's where I think it's too hard. It's for as an entry game. If you're wondering how to win, if it is too hard for you, go ahead, check out this link. I'll put a link to my video of how to win because there is a strategy that you can win 90% of the time. That if you follow these strategies, they might sound weird, but I ask you to try them. Let me know. Comment in that video of what you think when you try it because I want to know more of what you guys do and how it works for you, or maybe some of your strategies that helps you win more often, right? Go ahead, check out that video. Thank you so much.